I'll tell you a really good story. When Jack Garland's place, Jack Garland owned the Pepsi, right? And in 1961, I was not old. Garland's burnt down. It was on Oak Street. McDonald's originally was on Oak Street. You know where a Holiday Inn is? That's where McDonald's originally was, across from Lakeview.
Oh, okay.
And Garland's was up the street, and it burnt to the ground. And there was always it was pretty heavy rivalry in those days. You were a Coker or you were a Pepsier.
Welcome to the North Bay Echo studio.
Excellent. Yeah. My first time talking to you in a professional manner.
Yeah, it is, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Usually it's just social. Dave Dale's media empire.
Multimedia Dave. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not boring, eh? It's not boring.
Well, hey, fill those days with there's no good, there's no journalism left. So it's good that you're journaling.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep trying for sure.
Yeah.
Which brings us, to today's conversation. We lost somebody. I was just getting to know Terry Lucenti, but you're old friends, right?
I've known Terry for 30 years or more. I knew of Terry before I knew Terry, but yeah, when I was a teenager, I worked for a North Bay guy, Frank Caruso, who had some pizza shops, and I worked at one of his pizza shops out in Trout Lake, and delivery guys just never came back from Terry's when they went out there to deliver. They just, you knew if you got one out to the address out there where Terry lived, you just you almost called another driver right away. Yeah, he's not coming back. So Terry was notorious to me before I met him.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I actually last spring I went out to his place and had a chance to sit down and talk to him. I talked him into letting me put the video camera going. It was he was showing me some photos for his dad's Carmel's orchestra and Macdonald's Beverages, and he's talking about the old days. We had wide ranging conversation, and if we had more beer, I would still be there. Right?
That's for sure.
He was trying to get me drinking wine with him, but I was smart enough not to. Yeah,
Beaujolais Terry.
We actually talked when the camera was off. We started talking about a little bit more stuff, and we were talking about you and some other things. We both probably we were victims of some really good medicine that you were. So he told me a couple stories, right? Right on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Poor Terry. But he was smart. He never came up behind the dumpster when he was playing his guitar. He kept his head on his shoulders and feet on the ground. But
right on. And so you were at his celebration of life.
I was, and
tell
it
me
was
about...
there were so many people there. You forget. Terry had a lot of friends, but I mean, Terry had a lot of groups of friends. And, so he knew there were people there from, the old days when he used to deliver, soda for his dad from McDonald's. And then just friends who were friends of the band, which has been the Trout Lake Monsters for probably the last 30 years. And just prior to that, it was called Johnny Rock and the Batch. Which is a whole other thing with Billy Milne. I don't know if you ever met Bill Milne.
I have.
Yeah. So Bill was Johnny Rock, and the band was the Batch, which included Barry Green and Jim Harney and the great Chris Gardner on bass. At times, Rob Jonice on drums. Pretty crazy band that was, and the Batch was just something in a blender. So whatever was in the blender, was the Batch, and those days. When you're
Yeah.
10 feet tall and bulletproof, you're not scared of the blender.
Well, yeah. What year was that? What years?
I'm going to say late 80s, just coming into the into the 90s, that
Mm.
long ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and crazy times out at Fufu on Anita Avenue. And that's what Terry called his place, Fufu Lodge.
Yep.
And then, of course, then that's where the Trout Lake Monsters were born, which was basically Terry and Dave DeMarco and some like-minded guys just putting together a band out on just hanging out in Trout Lake and carrying on. And then, over time, people leave, other people come in and out. And um, there was a time when Dave DeMarco just could not come and front that band. So, you know, that didn't deter Terry, though. He'd just book the band and then he'd call me, I need you. So that was fun. And usually if that happened, Jim and I would both go. And so we'd bring our party to his party and just kind of blend them together.
Mm.
So that was a lot of fun. Terry's fun to play with because he was not like most guitar players that you they have in a band. Because Terry grew up at his dad's knee, listening to trumpet lines and clarinet lines and individual melodies that would all fit together to make big band music like his dad had. And so when Terry played guitar, Terry was playing chords that sounded like a horn section, or he'd play a lead solo that was, he could rock your face off. But within his guitar solos were those great sort of melodic trumpet and clarinet and saxophone lines that you don't hear most guitar players play because that's not what they grew up listening to. Most guitar players you hear sound like the guitar players they grew up listening to. And Terry played guitar like horn players that he grew up, particularly his dad, and sitting, and just listening to the practices and whatever. So Terry brought that, and to the point where they did a North Bay. I don't know what year they were celebrating, but Patty Fideli wrote a really funny sort of send up of North Bay. And Edna Boyer directed it, and it had everybody who would get recognized on the street in it. But they got Terry to just sit on the stage with an electric guitar, but at a low volume, and just play those fun songs that he knew with the horn lines and stuff. So as in between scenes, it was, and so. So that was Terry's background, and but a lot of guys came through the Trout Lake Monsters. When you think of like Bob McCarthy was a bass player, Jim Harney was a bass player, Mark Clout was a bass player in the band. Chris Beatty played drums for the Trout Lake Monsters. Mike Guerin played drum for the Trout Lake Monsters. Mike Perot is sort of the last drummer to play with the Trout Lake Monsters, who he runs the Gateway City Brewery. Mike used to own Music City in North Bay. So, so a wide range. And of course, the other solid all the way through the Monsters was the great Barry Green, who had played in the Monsters forever as well. And he was part of the batch before that with Johnny Rock. So, and it's funny, I talked to Lucy, and he had, I just called him Lucy. He had so many nicknames, like everybody had a nickname for him. I had 6 of my own, and depended on the situation. He was either Clarence or Lucille or Lucy. Sometimes I called him the Eel, Lucille the Eel. And when he's playing his guitar, that's when I call him Lucille the Eel, just really slippery and stuff like that. And I had mentioned that to my wife just as we were driving to North Bay. on Saturday, and she's Finn. And she said something out loud in Finn, and I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Oh," she said, "it's an old Finn saying. It says, a love child has many names." And
Hmm.
and that was Terry. Like everybody loved him, but and he, but he had like everybody had at least 3 or 4 nicknames for him. So Lucy and Lucille, the two of those being sort of common throughout, but everybody had different things. So that was, Terry influenced a lot of players with the way he played. Um, he and Jake would, whenever they got together, it was always a ripping good time. Um, it would be a guitar fest for sure, but keeping the groove. So, um, which was good. Not too many guitar players out there that can play a 5-minute solo and keep the dance floor full at the same time.
Wow. Yeah.
And Jake and Terry are each one of them, and together, crazy.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I only had that brief afternoon with him, other than we did some Facebook messaging. In fact, the day before he passed, he messaged me about a podcast he saw, and he was joking that he'd like to see this one person debate this other person on my next podcast on the Trout Lake development issue. And he was
Oh, goodness.
and just because he thought it would be entertaining and fun, and of course he knows everything that about Trout Lake, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
uh, he was going to get me some photos from back in the day. Do you have any photos of the Trout Lake Monsters from?
You know what? I don't because I guess that was sort of before taking a picture of everything was popular. And of course, if I was playing, I wasn't taking any pictures. Um, um, but I'll send you a message off the pod with a couple of names
Okay,
of
I
guys who
appreciate
would
that.
have some guys who would have some pictures.
Hmm.
Um, for sure, Dean Falcone. I can say that because I was also going to mention that Dean has also been a Trout Lake Monster over the years. Dean's a great
Okay.
guitar player and piano player.
Hmm.
So,
W-
he might have that.
How would you describe Terry's character, personality?
Well, Terry was happiest when everybody was laughing. So whether it was someone else's joke or his story or whatever, if everybody was laughing, then that's when Terry was sort of at his element. And he had a huge laugh. Like you
I
knew
have it
his
recorded.
laugh.
I have a recorded
Oh,
video.
there you
Yeah,
go. Yeah, there you
yeah.
go. And it's like, like you just,
He-
like, I mean, right from the gut and genuine.
yeah.
And, yeah, and he'd remember little things that just made him howl. And, I won't say where I was, but I was standing somewhere, um, where I shouldn't have been smoking a cigarette. And right behind me was this huge no smoking sign. And I was like leaning on it. I'm sorry. And this was in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and the person that was in charge um, approached me. And there had been some animosity between he and I at some other point. And I was smoking this cigarette. And so he came up and said, can you read? And I just responded, sure. What do you need read? Well, Terry was there. He's told that story. If he's told that story 1,000 times, and like people are going, "Oh, you're the guy, the smart ass who was smoking," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, thanks, Terry."
Yeah.
That was one of those stories that just he thought that was just the funniest thing,
Hmm.
and he would tell it, and he would, "Oh, this guy I know," you know, and He used to tell another story about a guy he worked with who he was pretty funny. He was a pipeliner like Terry as well, and some of these old guys. But this guy would be away from work for 6 weeks, and he'd come home, and he'd give his wife almost all the money, and he'd disappear for a week, and he just whatever. Nobody ever knew what he did. But apparently one day his wife said, she said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "None of your business." And she said, "Well, like, what do you do?" He said, "Don't worry about it." And then she apparently she asked him, "Well, what would you do if I told you I was sleeping with the boarder?" Because they had a boarder in the house. And the guy responded, "Well, I tell you to raise his rent." And that was another one of those stories that, and Terry must have told me that story 50 times. And it was just as funny the way he told it as it was the first time. And he'd have that laugh, and he'd try to sound like the guy, and so that was Terry. And I mean, loved his.
I lost you. I can't hear you anymore. I can hear you now. I can hear you
Okay.
now.
I just okay. I just got a countdown. But yeah, he had a kind word for almost anybody that he knew, and he would, he just that was Terry. Terry he wasn't one of those guys who cranked about anybody. Not to me. The friendship that we had for 30 years, which revolved around the Shack, Waxy, Jimmy, myself, Terry, and when I lived in North Bay, I mean, it was a twice weekly, group hangout for sure when Terry was in town. But yeah, just a guy and he loved the lake, and he was concerned about the lake, and he was always one of his things was he worked out of town so much that he couldn't invest any time in any of those groups out on Trout Lake that he wanted to. But then he also had no patience for 19 committees deciding on which committee was going to figure out what the other committees were going to do. So, and I've seen your podcasts, nor do you. So, but that was Terry in a nutshell. A good guy, solid, but most of all, a fun guy to play with. Always fun to play with on stage. And I'll tell you a funny story, because Terry would get so wound up playing that sometimes he just couldn't stop. And a couple examples of that. One night we were playing at 100 George's. Mike Byrne was the drummer, sharp wit. And Trout Lake Monsters staple is Under My Thumb, sort of the Rolling Stones version of Under My Thumb, like the original. And then they put their Trout Lake Monster thing on it. And at the end of that song, it just plays one chord. It's a G chord, and it just doesn't change. And Terry would like to solo over it. And it's fun for a guitar player to solo over one chord because it keeps you. But he wouldn't stop. And it went on and on. And it was probably only 2 or 3 minutes, but that's long. It felt like 10.
Yeah.
Finally, I just looked around and I said, "All right," and boom, and we finished the song. And Terry says, "That was fun. What do you want to do now?" And Mike right behind the drums, "Well, let's play that again." But he'd get so wound up. And the other story was, it was so funny. We were playing at the Davidi Club, and it was a big night. The room was jammed. It was one of those fundraising pubs, and again, Dave DeMarco couldn't make it, so Jim and I were involved, and that was sort of at the height of the Tequila Brothers. So I mean, there was that kind of shenanigans going on, and but the music came down, and you're introducing everybody like the rock stars, right? So everybody's going to take a little solos. So I introduced Terry, and he winds off this thing, and then the girls all clap. The girls love Terry. Terry loved the girls, and the girls loved Terry, and I mean that's no secret. Um, and and then and then I turned to introduce the bass player, which was Jim, and Terry just kept playing. But you're like, okay, and so Jim just laughing, playing because he's played with Terry. But then I went to introduce Barry Green, who is so quiet on stage. He played as quietly as he spoke. So,
Yeah.
you had to turn him up all the time. And Terry wouldn't stop playing. Well, if Jim doesn't run over and yank Terry's cord right out of his amp, right out of his guitar, lassos up in the air like that, fires it off into the crowd. Just classic Terry's. And he's like, oh. Like he was lost. It was there. He was playing and he was just lost in it. And, so funny times. But, yeah, so I mean the Trout Lake Monsters, that band was like, I mean, they were a party band, and they were at the height of their sort of jam, sort of late 90s. They recorded a live album at Wilder's, and which is a great representation of that band. Charlie McNamara, the great Charlie McNamara, was on bass back in those days, and it was, but they played all of the frisbee football pubs that used to happen at Wilder's, where it would be just the room would be just throbbing, and the Monsters just rocking the house down. So that's about when they sort of their popularity peaked, and then like everything else, as the audience gets older, the parties get a little smaller, but you keep. But hiring the same bands, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's that's my friend Terry, pretty much in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a shame to lose a guy like that. It's a fact of life. People
is, yeah.
come and go, and he was, from all my indications, well loved and enjoyed his
He
life,
was. Yeah,
and
and he
my
left his mark.
yeah.
He
And
left
then
his mark for sure.
you're right. You're talking about when I was talking to him, we were talking about some issues. Anytime he got close to being making an opinion or a negative comment about something, he would wash it away and not want to be negative, not want to be too critical of somebody.
Yeah, he didn't want to speak badly of someone that wasn't there to defend themselves. So even if he thought that person was doing, like, he kept that to himself.
Yeah.
He pretty much allowed everybody to have their own first impression of someone.
Yeah,
So to speak.
and that's rare in my world.
Of course it is, because everybody just wants to tell you the bad news.
Yeah,
And because good news doesn't sell, that. And
yeah, it's a shame. I'd wish I could make a living doing good news.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, really. And oh yeah, don't even. I can't. I can't.
Yeah, we don't have to go there.
The rage farming that happens, and
Yeah.
I can barely go on the former Twitter anymore. I can't. I look and I feel like it's really funny what politics from and on both sides, on all sides of it, but also in like what I would call like mainstream media even. It's like it's all been dumbed down to about third grade, and it's name calling, like it's third grade name calling and bullying, and so I'm like, oh, Anyway, that's a whole other subject
Yeah,
for
it
a
is.
whole other day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you back in the Bay, you going to come back here, Tom?
Oh yeah, for sure. I get back every once in a while, and um, I don't have any gigs booked. I haven't been playing a lot of music lately, but Waxy and I are to do like we usually we like to do something in the spring, and we like playing down at Lou Dog's. So Ryan gets us in about once every 4 months, so we'll probably plan something for late March.
I was just at Lou Dogs last night. Actually, they had a little mixer between the musicians and the film industry.
That's right. Yeah, I saw that. And how did that go? Did they
I
have
thought it
some
was
turnout?
excellent. Well,
Yeah.
David White was there,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah, yeah.
he
He's very
played.
good.
Yeah, what's his middle name again? David.
Dino,
Yeah, and
Dino, or Dino. Yeah.
yeah, and that was really awesome because that was one time I could hear and really sort of focus in on his talent. It was pretty wild.
Yeah,
And then
yeah. Because usually in his band, he's sort of in the mix, but when he's by himself, that's you can you hear those lyrics, and he's a clever songwriter.
well, what I noticed, and I'm just scratching the surface there, but he really mastered his voice in the mic, like as if he could hear exactly what I could hear.
Yep.
And the way he knew when to be there and when to like I noticed that he was really a master at that. Some people aren't.
Well, that's good. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? And it's funny because a lot of singers will spend a lot of time doing all kinds of things, and they never think about microphone technique.
Yeah.
And like you watch like some of the, and I used to, because when I like, when I first started out, you're using the old tried and true SM58. And like I still have the first SM58 I ever bought. It's probably 30 years old. Um, it works, but I don't use it. I have a newer one, but it's still the same microphone, just a newer one. So in my mind, it must sound better. And gearheads, and but I mean, it was always be right on the mic, which then which gives you all the bass in your voice. And but it took me probably 5 or 6 years before I realized sometimes you just want to be here, and then you start to learn a little bit about mic technique. But and you see the singers on big stages, and I mean they're holding that microphone here,
Mm-hmm.
and and at the sound compression levels that are happening on that stage, to have your microphone here means that it's it's a good mic, but there's all the control is with the singer, and just move, and it changes the tone and everything else. But yeah, you're right. You're right. But I think he's been touring, and so he might, like that's one of the things you learn when you're playing every night. You start to, so. Yeah, Sam Harvey put that together, that mixer.
Yeah, he was handling the music end of it, and the other guy that played was Johnny Wyatt.
Oh, John
Have
Wyatt.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think he's just moving back to Guelph.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he played from his originals, and wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's the real deal too. A lot of talent in North Bay, and in North, it blows my mind the talent in Northern Ontario. There's a there's a young kid up in Kapuskasing. Sounds like he's 50 years old. I don't think he's 16 years old yet, but he
What's
plays
his name?
guitar. Logan Staley.
Hmm.
I'll send you a link to one of his videos. Plays with some buddies that when I lived up in Kapuskasing doing radio up there. I met some guys up there, and
When were you there?
I was in Kapuskasing from 2003 to 2008.
Oh,
Yeah.
hmm.
I was on air up I was Moose FM,
No
and
kidding.
oh yeah, went over
I lived
to
up there for 2 years, 91, 90, 91, and
oh
part
yeah.
of 92. Yeah, yeah. What a place.
Oh
I
yeah.
liked it. I really enjoyed it up there. It was just too far away from all my friends' family. I didn't have a car and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah, it's isolated, and if you're not into all the winter sports, it can be a long winter.
yeah, I was a
Um,
sports editor, so it was like I was
oh, there you
busy.
go.
A sports
There you
editor
go.
and partying with everybody.
Did you
I
work for
think
Wayne? Wayne, yeah,
Wayne Major, Wayne
yeah,
Major,
Wayne
and
Major and his
yeah,
wife
and
Barbara.
yeah. And
That's
so
right.
the Northern Times office is across the street from the Shadow Cap.
Yeah, from the
Uh,
Shadow Cup right there, and beside the China Clipper.
yeah, so I had, and there was I lived on an apartment on the other side of the circle, right? So that was
Okay.
my life. Um, I leave work, go to the Shadow Cap, stumble, get a pizza, go home, come back, Shadow Cap.
Yeah.
It was just
That's the first place. It's really funny. It's the first place I played when I got up there. I met some guys right away,
yeah.
who are these guys that are mentoring this young lad playing guitar. But yeah, I know I got up there and I got to town on a Friday, like, with a Monday start coming up. I got to town on a Friday night and I thought, I'm going to go see where the local bands are. And at the time, there were 4 bars or 5 maybe. And so I thought, well, I'll start here at the Shadow Cap. If I don't walk in and the first song that the band is playing is Friendships by Sab.
No way.
Yeah, they're covering Friendships. And I'm like, and I remember to this day, I remember flipping my phone open and finding Sab in my thing, calling him and holding my phone up because I knew he'd be playing. So it was going to go to his voicemail and just letting him. And then, so I just left that on there and absolutely. Like, I think my phone rang at 2:30 in the morning. And I said, it's the first song I heard at the first bar I went to in Kapuskasing is somebody covering Friendships. It was, so, um, but yeah, so the Shadow and then the Sunshine Tavern played a lot there. And then I never played at the Empire. It was sort of, that was kids. Um,
Um,
but
which,
yeah, no, I know I lived above the bakery.
oh, okay.
Above the boulangerie, big, huge 3-bedroom apartment. Well, here's a huge 3-bedroom apartment with a laundry room in it with washer and dryer. Uh, 5 appliances in the kitchen, and my rent was $550 a month.
Oh my, yeah,
Oh
right on.
yeah. So I mean, some advantages to living in Kapuskasing, but yeah. And
She's
my feet were always warm.
oh, so yeah,
Living over
okay,
the
you're right.
bakery,
Yeah,
my feet
yeah,
were
yeah,
always warm.
right.
Oh yeah.
But were you hungry? Were you smelling bread all day?
Oh well, the thing is that I'd leave at about 5 a.m. for the to head over to the station, which was that big 3-minute walk to the next block on the circle,
Yeah.
and it was on the other side of Spatchek's, and um, but I'd slip my head in the back door and grab the apple fritter that was in the paper bag there for me,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
oh yeah, like. By the time I got to the station, the oil was just because they're deep fried in lard,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, either
I
if you're gonna go deep on the apple fritter, right?
I ballooned up to 205 when I was in
Oh
Cal.
yeah, absolutely.
Between the beer and the pizzas and the
Oh yeah,
bakery. Oh my God.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I hate to.
yeah.
When you mentioned Sab and Jim and Terry, Jesus, and I know there's a couple other guys that are struggling.
Very green.
And Barry,
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually saw Jake the other day for the first time in many months. He was at a restaurant, just got out, and
Yeah.
he's in the healing mode.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I saw him on Saturday.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he's made the turn for the better.
And I bumped into Mike Foisey last night. Do you know Mike Foisey?
I know Mike Foy's a great drummer,
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
excellent mason
He was telling me
of the brick
that.
variety.
Yeah. He was telling me a bassist that he knew just passed yesterday. It was like 5:30.
Oh wow.
So dropping like flies, man. And we're gonna have to record more people and capture these stories because you don't want to lose them, right?
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, no,
So,
it's just, you know, I mean, like I'm 63 now.
mhm.
Um, so the guys that I grew up listening to are at that age now, right? And, you know, it's, I mean, both sort of professionally out in the world and, um, you know, and then guys you played with. And, you know, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. So every day's gravy for all of us, right?
Every day that I'm topside, I'm a happy man.
Yeah.
Wake up, got a good wife, got a good life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Appreciate the time.
Like ginger ale isn't a big seller. You know what I mean? It's not like your Cokes and it's not like your Orange Crushes and that. But everybody seemed to like ginger ale,
Mm-hmm.
and they made it every Sunday. My brother and I, Wayne, would go to the syrup room. Not every Sunday, but Dad is like, "Hey, let's go," and we'd make a batch of Temagami Dry. They had 4 big vats, and the first thing you do, we used that. I mean, there was a lot of sugar in pop, and there still is, unfortunately. And I remember there was 4 little steps and a little cubby hole, and the first vat, and Dad would fill it full of water, and he'd have and it would start to, start to spin like slowly. Stainless steel vats, beautiful vats, and our job was to get 8 100-pound bags of sugar in that vat. So Wayne and I, we were about 10, 12, 15 or whatever, and there was 4 little steps and a little window, like I said, and they had the, the old 5 mil bags, and they'd have, we'd take the top off, and the 2 of us could barely lift it, but we'd get it up, and then we'd flip it over. And there was 8 of those into a big batch of Temagami Dry, which would probably make, I think. Then they would run, and then he would run it. Then he put the extract in, and then they would run it through a filter and then back, so that and then it would sit overnight. And the next day, of course, the syrup room was on the 2nd floor at Macdonald's, and through gravity, the next day they would run. They'd run the 10 ounce bottles, right? And the syrup would come down, and then the CO2, the carbonated water, it was usually 6 to 1. 6 to 1, like 6 CO2, right? Carbonated water to 1, so that much syrup, that much soda water. Then they would go around, as you know, and then they'd cap it, and then they put it in the cases. But the biggest seller was the quarts, right? They were Cokes, actually at the time they were 30 ounces, right? And Dad, it's called Beaumet. Dad called it Beaumet. It's the amount of gas per water. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Put in, like, the Beaumet in Temagami Dry was 30 degrees. Whatever that means, I don't understand but Dad, so they cranked the CO2 to it, right? So when you open that, I don't know if you remember.
Yep.
You would almost get, wow. And the Beaumet was Coke's was 25. Coke was more frothy, Temagami was boom.
Yeah,
it was
more like champagne.
But stronger.
Yeah.
Champagne's light.
Okay.
This is like,
yeah.
And I don't know if you, but there's no better drink than a Ryan Temagami. And there's a formula, but they also made the 6 ounce. They called them splits for the bars, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember bars used to keep small Coke and small ginger as soda water, tonic water.
Yeah.
It was easier for them. Click, instead of, now they're all on fountains, but that's cool. Now, there's some kind of, I don't know how, but volume. Like Dad always said, the best Coke is a small Coke, because the volume of CO2, right, in the small, I don't understand physics, but that was the best Coke because it gave you that punch, right? And Temagami's was amazing.
Where did
And
you get the extract? You were saying Montreal?
a place called Rose and La Flamme, Laflamme, and Rose and La Flamme, and it was real extract. And he got all his extract from, like, they made breakfast orange, they made cream soda, which was the white one, they made Scotch soda, which was the red one, they made Dutch root beer, and they made the best lemon lime you've ever tasted, and black cherry. That didn't sell very well, but his breakfast orange, it wasn't carbonated. Breakfast orange wasn't carbonated, and you, wow, that can't be very good, but it tasted amazing because of the extract. It was real. It was real extract. And I remember the salesman. Remember the old day? All the salesmen, they didn't have any computers. Nothing was online. They would drive. He was from Montreal, and he would. But see, there was so many bottlers.
Right.
Everything was bottled. My dad was head of the Ontario Bottlers Association.
Okay.
In 1955, and that was a big deal. You know, all the 7-Up guys were there, and all the Pepsi guys were there, and they'd go down to the Royal York, and I mean, they didn't make a lot of money, those guys, you know, but and I'll tell you a really good story. When Jack Garland owned the Pepsi, right? And in 1961, I wasn't that old. Garland's burnt down. It was on Oak Street. Macdonald's originally was on Oak Street. You know where a Holiday Inn is? That's where Macdonald's originally was, across from Lakeview.
Oh, okay.
And Garland's was up the street, and it burnt to the ground. And you know, there was always it was pretty heavy rivalry in those days. You were a Coker or you were a Pepsier. You know, now if it's $8.99 at Shoppers, you buy Coke. If it's, you know what I mean, like Coke, Pepsi. There's not that much of a product allegiance anymore. I don't know if there is. I don't think there is. You know.
No, I don't think so. But the people, you know, they'll take it, whatever.
Yeah.
But because the stores or the bars only have one or the other.
Right.
Right. That's
Right.
why.
Right. Well, exactly. So Garland's burnt down, and JL offered to Jack Garland that he could use his syrup room and bottling plant. So Garland's moved into Macdonald's while they were rebuilding their place.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And I remember when I was a kid, I was only about 8 years old. I walked into the back where they kept the trucks, and there was Pepsi trucks in there, and I went, "Dad!" Because we were brainwashed to drinking Coke. You know,
The evil empire.
The evil empires there, exactly. It's really funny, and I don't want to get political, but you don't have to.
That's fine.
But the Liberals bought Pepsi, and the Conservatives bought Coke. It was as simple as that.
I can see that.
It was as simple as if there was a, you know what I mean? If Harris was having a function, they would order the Coke and Tomagami for the party. If J.J. Blair or anyone, it was Garland's. It was funny. It was that simple.
That is funny.
It is funny.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't get a Coke at Memorial Gardens for 10 years because they signed a 10-year contract with Pepsi, exclusive.
No kidding.
Yeah. And that's just politics, right?
Yeah. Well, that's business.
That is business too, right?
And politics.
You get in there,
thing.
right? Exactly. So, and I remember one time, I think it was one of the Canada geezers that played hockey. I think he played for LA then.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was Ab DeMarco. We were here. I remember we had a boathouse here. And they came over to talk to my dad, Mr. Lucenti, and they really were respectful. I mean, these guys were, you know, big hotshot hockey players, but they stayed here in the summer, right? And you mind, can we come over? Yeah, you can come over. And then they come over, and they wanted to talk to him about getting an exclusive franchise with Tawagami Drive. They thought they could sell it, you know, this is a great product. And my dad listened to them, and he said, guys, there's probably 50 other ginger ales out there as good as ours. It's how you market it, right? He said, it's how you market it. He said, it's just another ginger ale. But we got it, we have her figured out here, right?
Yep.
And we didn't brainwash anybody, but we put out a good product. Our quality control is bar none. And I don't think it would fly. And they go, are you sure? Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. I thought Dad would jump at that, but they did all right. But they also had Temagami they had a small place in New Liskeard, Lauren Prentice, and they also had one distributorship in Cochrane. So it was all over the north. And Temagami was a big deal. But it wasn't like if you stopped at Larry's Chip Stand,
Yeah.
you'd get an order for 10 Coke and maybe 3 Temagami, cases. But it was consistent. People always seemed to like it. Oh, I love Temagami Dry. And I know people used to drive up here to North Bay and go to the plant and pick up a case or two.
Yeah.
Dad didn't like that because he'd lose the bottles.
Yeah.
Oh, he was crazy that way. Well, are you going to bring the bottles back? Well, of course not. But
Yeah.
he wasn't cheap, but every dollar counted.
Yeah. Yeah.
He almost killed me once. We had BB guns and we had some Temagami Coke bottles. He almost killed me. My friend Brian Craig and Al Gardner. He said, "The hell are you using my bottles for?" But that's, and you had to have that. What they've done is gone backwards. They should be still using bottles.
Mm-hmm.
I think
definitely.
I think Bob and Dad figured out the average trip on a bottle was 7 times. Well, that makes sense, right?
Yep.
Keep using it.
Yep. Yeah, no, the way they do things now is...
It's stupid.
Yeah, it's just everything. Everything's geared towards...
convenience, but it's not convenient.
Not when you got to clean up the messes afterwards.
Well, exactly.
And then you find out about the science that they ignored, and it's plastic is killing us.
Totally. And he hated cans, and he hated, what he hated? Those 1.5. He hated those. He said, that's the worst. He says, once you open it, it's over. And he was right.
Yeah.
You get a 1 liter bottle of anything, as soon as you open it, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can put it on as... But see, this is an interesting thing. They all their tops they had cork in them. The original bottle caps they had cork in them, and it would, I don't know what it would do, but it was cork, And then as soon as they went to the plastic, that changed. He hated it. He couldn't stand those big bottles. Cans, he goes, whatever. I know you want to go fishing with your cans, but it doesn't taste the same. It's got to be in glass.
Yeah. Well, it's true.
It is.
Everybody knows you can taste the can.
Totally. Yeah. Even beer. Well, a friend of mine...
they still have that problem.
I like Miller, but I don't like it in a can. Because it tastes tinny. It's not the same, right?
And we'll probably find out that, that's killing us too.
Of course. Exactly. Well,
how come people are stupid? Metal?
Well, exactly.
Got to be a reason. And so you're showing me this thing with the...
That's when Bob...
60 years later.
That's 60, of course, and that's in 66.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Dad started at Coca-Cola at Macdonald's at 1936. So he was already there, 46, 56, he was already there 30 years.
Okay.
And at the, he was, I don't know, 60 or 50 or whatever he was. He probably did have the option, to buy it outright. But at his age, he says, I said to him, why didn't you just buy it yourself? He said, I don't mind being number 2. Because he had other things going. He had the band, and I got something here for you too. He had Lucenti's orchestra, and they opened the radio station. He was a pretty interesting guy. And I'm not gloating about my dad, but a lot of things he said to me were right. And the thing about the guys that worked at McDonald's, they didn't pay nothing. They really didn't pay a lot of money. It's just like you guys in the newsprint, how much money did Dave Planger make? Not very much. He was good at it, so were you. And you guys were all really good. Dad had a really good connection to the Nugget. And, they didn't make a lot of money. But nobody ever quit. Yeah. I don't know if it was
steady job with a good employer means something.
Exactly.
It used to, anyways.
It did, yeah. Like the guy that...
Of course, cost of living wasn't as high either.
Well,
so
exactly.
They could get by. If you can get by, you're going to stick with solid, right?
Right.
You're going to, regular paycheck, good people,
right,
close to where you are,
right,
family,
right,
whatever. A boss that won't, freak you out.
Right.
That's worth something if you can get by. the only problem
Right.
is when you can't get by on a paycheck. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what they're finding now.
That is the difference. Eh?
Yeah.
Like a car was $5,000 then, or whatever. You know.
That's the big difference.
Now they're $80,000. You know. So yeah, it's nuts. I saw a lady yesterday at Sobeys, and I'm a regular. My daughter's. I have one daughter, and she's in Guelph, and so I don't buy groceries for a week. I get them for a couple of days, you know, because you get a bunch of shit.
I'm a bachelor, man. It's like
you end up throwing everything
at the grocery
away.
store every 2 days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I saw a lady come out, and she had a 2-year-old with her, and she was filled up, and I wasn't rude or anything. I said, $500? She goes, $420. I went, whoa. My new tune called Jordan.
Got the tune. Yeah, got the tune.
This one, eh?
Yeah.
Melodic.
What, I don't know much about the music, but what did you do there?
With the capo?
Yeah, all the music you're playing there. Like,
A little Gordon Lightfoot, a little George Harrison, a little Terry Lucenti.
right on.
One of my favorite songs is Cotton Jenny. And Gordon just died. It's the most insanely perfect song. There's a bit, there's a cotton Jenny one, and then it'll be up when the sun goes down, and the wheel of love goes round, and it's like, well done, man. And the love goes round, and love goes round, and he just nailed it. He's just there. There's our 3 minutes. The funniest thing about that, he went to Nashville to record it, and he brought Red Shea and his Toronto guys, but he hired a few Nashville guys, to play drums and that. Done. He did it live. He did it basically live. That's what we saw. So Bob Dylan hears the CD and he goes, I want to hire those guys. So he brings them up to New York. Didn't sound the same. That's fucking funny. Sorry, Bobby. You need Gordon Lightfoot.